Championship Series with Kia in Gear.
The twists and turns of the Mid-Ohio race circuit await the start of round 14 of the FedEx Championship Series. Hello, it's great to have your company. I'm Ben Edwards, and as usual, joined by Jeremy Shaw, here to bring us the inside line on Champ Car Racing. And we've got some sunshine, I'm glad to report. Jeremy, the weather this weekend has been somewhat variable.
Yeah, absolutely gorgeous now, but yesterday, absolutely completely rained out second qualifying, so the grid was set on Friday.
6 points the advantage for Dario Franchitti in the championship table, because he's got the extra point for pole position here today. Michael Andretti runs third, Paul Tracy fourth, and of course Christian Fittipaldi cannot score today. He's still out of action.
And there is the points breakdown: 20 points for a victory, 16 for second, down to 12 is 1 point, 1 for the pole and 1 for the driver leading most laps.
And so the pole point has gone to Dario Franchitti. It's his second pole in a row at Mid-Ohio. Brian Herter joins him on the front row, and it's his best qualifying performance of the season. The second row sees the other team green entry of Paul Tracy, who's finished second 3 times here. Tony Kanaan with a local-based team running fourth.
Row 3 of the grid, Jimmy Vasser, he finished second here in 1996, and Gilles de Ferran, the quickest of the Goodyear contingent, already a winner this season. On row 4, Elio Castro Neves, he was fastest on Friday morning, and Juan Montoya has been struggling with the balance of his car.
Ninth on the grid is Max Papis, whose race ended at the first corner in Detroit. Alongside him is Robby Gordon, who finished second here some years ago. 11th on the grid, disappointing for Michael Andretti, a twice winner on this circuit. 12th for Richie Hearn, however, is his best of the season.
Row 7, Mimo Gidley, a very good effort in the underfunded Peyton Coyne Racing team. Alongside him, Cristiano De Mata. On row 8 of the grid, Jan Magnussen, driving a Reynard chassis this weekend for Pat Patrick's team, and Gualter Salas in the Eagle.
17th on the grid is Maurizio Guterman, who led the early laps here last year. Michel Jourdain's had a great qualifying. He's 18th. 19th on the grid is Roberta Moreno in his second outing for the Newman Haas team, replacing Fittipaldi. Alongside him is Scott Pruitt.
Row 11 of the grid, PJ Jones sitting in for his close friend Adrian Fernandez, injured a week ago in Detroit. He spun off in qualifying. Alongside him, Alonso Jr. On row 12, Naoki Hattori, and Luis Garcia driving a second Lola Mercedes for Hogan Racing.
And the final row, just look at this for a moment. The last row is Greg Moore and Mark Blundell. Greg Moore went off in qualifying. Mark Blundell's time was disallowed. There was something a little illegal about the bodywork, which wouldn't have made much difference, but he starts from the back. Team Green, however, starting from the front here today. Dario on pole, Paul Tracy from the second row.
Paul Tracy and Dario Franchitti, they've been so good in the recent races. Paul Tracy, the last 7 races, he's scored more points than anybody, moved from 13th to 4th in the standings. In Toronto, Franchitti first, there is Paul Tracy behind him. 1 week ago in Detroit, another 1-2 finish. Dario Franchitti and Paul Tracy, that team is really running strong at the moment.
It is, and they love this track. It's a 2.2-mile permanent road course with lots of ups and downs, twisty corners. The start takes place on the backstretch between 3 and 4.
The start-finish straight is really too short, so the long back straight, a much better place for the start, usually.
But it doesn't always work like that. This is what happened last year between Herter and Franchitti.
Yeah, Herter forced his way down the inside, then going up the hill here. Franchitti tries to poke his nose in again, they make contact. Jimmy Vasser also is taken out of the race. This weekend, however, Franchitti really can't afford to be that brave at the start. He needs the championship points, Ben.
He does, but they start on the front row together. On boards with Michael Andretti. Also on board with Max Papis. Juan Montoya starting in a disappointing 8th. They've been struggling to get the balance of the car right this weekend. Tony Kanaan starting from 4th position. And now the cars begin to line up into position, side by side. But the start of the race is still a few corners away. As we mentioned, the start takes place on the back stretch here at Mid-Ohio. So the car's getting ready now for the start of the race here at Mid-Ohio. Dario Franchitti and Brian Herter will start from the front row of the grid together. Second row, Paul Tracy and Tony Kanaan. Looking at the analysis of the race, and in fact Alonso Jr. is in the pit lane. He is not going to take the start of this race, but the rest of them are, and here we are heading down the back stretch now. As we prepare for the start, the green flag will come out about halfway along this back stretch, but remember, will it be clean into the first corner? Franchitti gets on the gas and begins to pull away immediately. They get the green flag and they get underway, and Franchitti has the advantage as they head down into the first corner on Paul Tracy on the inside of Kanaan. Kanaan and Tracy almost side by side, but they get through with Tracy ahead of Kanaan, and now Vasser tries to go around the outside of Kanaan as they go through turn number 5.
Great move there by Jimmy Vasser around the outside. Last year, those those three at the front there, to Dario Franchitti, Brian Herta and Jimmy Vasser, ended up in a fence. Not so this time around. And there is in first place there. Look, Franchitti already got a little bit of a lead over Brian Herta and Paul Tracy.
A very clean start this time. Franchitti just judged the moment to get on the power, and Herta got left a little bit, and now he's got Paul Tracy right behind him. So the two Team Green cars running first and third. Meanwhile, Alonso Jr. is just exiting the pits. That means he's going to rejoin right with the leaders, and that could cause one or two little problems. Let's wait to see. There is Untitled rejoining Alonso Jr. on the inside as the leaders come around past him at the end of the first lap. Franchitti leads. Herta second under pressure from Tracy. Tracy tucked in under the rear wing of the Shell car. Then it's Vasser, and then it's Tony Kanaan.
And as you said, a very clean start there. Great news for them. Alonso Jr. apparently he had a radio communication problem, and rather than just go out there and wing it, he came into the pits, changed his helmet and rejoined, and there he is. He's already one lap down there and in amongst the front runners here, and that's an awful start again for Alonso Jr.
Montoya came around at the end of that first lap in 8th place, and in fact he is now just behind Alonso Jr. He's got to find his way past that Lola. There is Helio Castroneves meanwhile in 6th position with Gilles de Ferran behind him in 7th place. Then it's Montoya trying to get past Unser, but he hasn't done it yet. Here we go. That's Montoya trying to squeeze past little Al, and he can't do anything about it yet.
And Alonso Jr., you know, he's done less laps already. He didn't do the pace lap, so he's had a hard time getting his tyres up to temperature. He really isn't up to full speed, and holding up Montoya pretty badly there. And, you know, Alonso Jr., he's a lap down already at this stage in a race. You're not going to make up a lap. He hasn't been competitive, really, in hardly any races this season. I don't really see the point in holding up Montoya at that stage.
No, it does seem very irrelevant, doesn't it? But Montoya has to find a way past Alonso Jr. And Montoya's been struggling with the handling of his car this weekend. They've changed just about everything. Now, this is the place where it will happen if it's going to. He gets a good slipstream, but so does Tracy on Brian Herta. And Tracy now trying to go around the outside, and he does it. Paul Tracy goes up into 2nd position. Team Green run 1 and 2 as Herta gets past as they went into turn number 4, the beginning of the S's.
Great move by Paul Tracy there. And once again here, Brian Herta, the Team Rahal crew, they tend to start off at the beginning of the race running a very lean fuel mixture. Lean fuel mixture means that they get better fuel consumption, but also less horsepower. And horsepower tells on the fastest part of the racetrack. Tracy able to pull alongside and then brake deeper and take away that 2nd position from Brian Herta.
The gap between Franchitti and Herta last time around was 2.8 seconds. Let's see what the gap is as Tracy crosses the line. 3.3 seconds. So now Franchitti knows his teammates up into 2nd. We're on board at the moment, just briefly there, with Tony Kanaan, the young Brazilian who runs in 5th position, driving the McDonald's race team entry. And Tony Kanaan, the winner of the Michigan race a few weeks ago. Good boost in confidence from that result. And he's shadowing Jimmy Vasser in a very similar car, of course, the Reynard with Honda power and on the Firestone tyres. These two right now behind Brian Herta, who also has Firestone tyres but uses the Ford engine in the back of his Reynard chassis.
Clearly you can see that Herta is holding up this train of cars, the two Team Cool Green cars running out in front. They have the same chassis, both Reynard chassis. They all have Firestone tyres, as Ben said, but the difference is the engines. The first two both in Honda engines, and Brian Herta in the Ford Cosworth, and he is holding up this train of cars. There's two more Reynard Hondas right behind him, and then the Lola Mercedes of Helio Castroneves.
Yes, then it's Gilles de Ferran 7th, Juan Montoya in 8th place, then Max Papis running in 9th place. Michael Andretti hasn't really made much progress. He's still down in 10th place. Robby Gordon is 11th. And Mimo Gidley is in 12th. Look at Tony Kanaan. Now that's an unusual place to go past. Turn number 1, almost flat out that corner. And somehow Tony found a way past Vasser.
Sensational. I don't know whether Jimmy Vasser missed a gear coming out of the carousel and down on the start-finish lane. But certainly Kanaan, a great move there. Meanwhile, let me tell you that Mark Blundell, who'd only moved up a couple of places, that's in 24th place, is in the pits for an early pit stop.
So Blundell in and back out very, very quickly. They may just be changing the fuel strategy on what other people are doing. Hard to say at this point.
Could be. If the race were to run all green, it would be tough for these guys to get to the end on just two fuel stops. By coming in early on, Blundell can top up the fuel tank and he can have a clean track in front of him. He was having a hard time getting past those slower cars. At least now he has a clear track and he can go flat out.
It's something that Alex Zanardi did to win this race a few years ago. He did 3 pit stops, was able to run full rich all the way, and did come out the winner. Well, Blundell won't win it from the back, but he's in with a good shout of passing some people. Franchitti leads in the early laps. Welcome back to the action here at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. You're riding on board with Juan Montoya, who got a little bit crossed up just then. He is still in 8th place, chasing after Gilles de Ferran, but there is our race leader. He has completed 7 laps here now, 76 laps still to go, long way to go in this race, and Dario Franchitti driving a superb race. He has a 3.7 second advantage. But watch out for this man. Tony Kanaan passed Jimmy Vasser a few laps ago, as we saw, and now he's got himself right in behind Bryan Herta and looking for any slight opportunity to get past Herta. And I think it won't take too long before he's trying to hunt around a little more, and perhaps under braking at the end of this stretch is where he could try it. Looks as though there that Herta has enough speed on the straight that Kanaan can't really close in.
Yeah, the first few laps of the race, Herta was unable to match the pace set by the 2 leaders, the 2 Team Cool green cars ahead of him. Now, though, the gap has stabilised somewhat, and Herta really is keeping pace with the Team Cool green cars, and we'll see whether that is enough to keep himself ahead of Tony Kanaan.
Yes, we'll watch that one with interest as Bryan Herta holds on to that 3rd place, 4th place for Tony Kanaan, 5th for Jimmy Vasser. We spotted that Mark Blundell had come in a little while ago, put in some fuel, and the good thing is he's got some clear track now, and he's putting in some fairly quick lap times, 1 minute 9.9 on his last lap, and that compares with the same sort of speeds that Tony Kanaan and Jimmy Vasser are doing. And of course Blundell's got some clear space, so that tactic may well work for them fairly well. Meanwhile, just looking on down the list, you can see Robby Gordon there, and he's running in 11th position. Ran very well in the warm-up this morning. Runs with Toyota power, remember, and he is the fastest of the Toyota users in this race. And watch out for right behind him is Mimo Gidley, the young American who's only had a few Champ Car races. This is only his 2nd outing for the Payson Coyne team, and he's running very competitively with these experienced veterans like Robby Gordon.
Really is doing a superb job. Has very little time in the car. He had a good run last weekend until it was halted by a gearbox failure, and he was absolutely thrilled with the car on Friday. Actual fact, he didn't do many laps because he had a problem with a seal on the turbo wastegate in the morning session, lost about 20 minutes, and then there was a bit of rain in the afternoon, plus he was off the road a little bit, and then he ran out of fuel on his best lap. But he reckoned that was a top 10 car, and that's what he wants to show this afternoon, currently in 12th.
There's Dario Franchitti coming around to complete another lap. The advantage 3.5 seconds, and it looks as though these two are pushing hard. 1 minute 8.7 for both Franchitti and Tracy on that last lap. 1 minute 8.8, just a 10th of a second slower from Bryan Herta, and in fact all of these leaders lapping at about the same pace. There's Alonso Jr. a lap down, remember, and then we look on down the order, picking up a few battles. There is Greg Moore. Now, Greg started at the back of the field, but he's down in 22nd place. He's only got past a few cars so far.
He's really made no progress at all. Of course, he moved up one position when Alonso Jr. didn't start the race from his grid position, and he is stuck there behind PJ Jones, and really does not seem to be able to make a move on PJ Jones at all. There is Greg Moore, and in 22nd place. That is not what he wants to keep his championship aspirations alive.
He is the only player's entry here this weekend. Patrick Carpentier suffered that accident last week when Maurizio Guterman rolled over the top of his car. Carpentier was injured in that accident. His head was actually pushed down to his knees virtually while he was in the cockpit, and there is a very slight crack in one of his vertebrae, which has put him out of the race for this weekend. But they do reckon he will be back next weekend in Chicago, believe it or not. Not so bumpy on the oval, and not quite so much physical stress on the oval track, and Carpentier is likely to be back next weekend. But for this weekend, it's a singleton entry for the Players Forsyth team. This battle continues further down. There's PJ Jones. We've got to get used to the fact that PJ's driving the Ducati car this weekend. So fixed in our minds, that's Adrian Fernandez's car. He's run with those colours for so many years in Champ Car racing. It seems strange to find another driver behind the wheel of the Ducati machine. PJ doing a fine job at the moment, though. Remember, he was replaced by Jan Magnussen in his own car, the Vistion car, and now, ironically, finds himself back in the same team, standing in for Adrian Fernandez.
Mark Blundell, meanwhile, he is back in 25th place, having made that stop. Let me tell you around that last time around, his lap time was a 1 minute 9 flat, which is a couple of tenths slower than Dario Franchitti. The previous lap was a 1:8.5, which is about the fastest lap of the race so far. So Blundell certainly has a fast car, but can he make up for all that ground that he lost from that being thrown out of qualifying on the first day on Friday, and then unable to make a move up on the grid on Saturday because of the rain?
Yes, the rain hurt so many people because they weren't able to do anything about their Friday qualifying, and a number of people did indeed have troubles, as you mentioned, Mark Blundell, Greg Moore, one or two others. Roberto Moreno didn't qualify well because of that one session. He has worked up to 15th. And here is a new driver, well, not a new driver quite, but a new car this weekend. It's the second Hogan entry. Up to now, Hogan have only entered one car, and that was for Helio Castroneves. This weekend, they're also running the Brazilian Luis Garcia Jr., who ran with Peyton Coyne earlier in this season. He stepped up from Indy Lights at the end of last year and had one win in the Indy Lights series. Now this weekend, he's in a Lola Mercedes driving for Hogan Racing. At the moment, he's quite a long way down. He's in 23rd position.
But hanging on to the tail of that battle with Greg Moore and PJ Jones and Michel Jourdain Jr. So he's certainly not being dropped by the rest of the field. Doing a pretty good job, I have to say.
On board once again with Tony Kanaan. I mentioned it's a local race for the team, Jeremy. It was the Tasman team. It is the Forsyth team now, but still run by Steve Horn. In fact, there are a couple of teams that are based not too far away from this racetrack down in Columbus.
Absolutely right. And the team Rahal and Forsyth Championship Racing, or the McDonald's Championship Racing team, are based just a half a mile away from each other in Hilliard, Ohio, a suburb of Columbus, and about an hour and 15-minute drive from Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course.
It means they've got a lot of guests here this weekend. Of course, for Team Rahal, you're seeing Brian Herter there in the front of the picture. He drives for Team Rahal. Bobby himself has had a tremendous relationship with this racetrack over the years, had some good results, and always enjoys the support that he's had here. Has a couple of pole positions and a couple of wins as well. Plenty of podium finishes here at Mid-Ohio in the past. And in fact, last year he had a good run, didn't he?
Yeah, and a very emotional day that was for Bobby Rahal. There was the last race he was going to do here, certainly in the championship cars at the very least. Maybe some historic races, maybe in his future. He's got quite a good collection of historic cars now, including a Lola T70 and an AC Cobra. But certainly he is out of the championship cars as a driver and now concentrating on his team, with Brian Herter currently in 3rd place and Max Papis in 9th.
So let's just ride on board with Tony for a second. He comes out of turn 1, then heads up towards turn 2. It's known as the keyhole, really, because there's a chicane that some race series use up at this part of the track, but not the champ cars. Now they're onto the longest straight, and they actually build up to just under 190 miles an hour as they approach turn number 4, the S's. And to the left of the area we're looking at now is a huge area that is covered with spectators. You can see it in the background there. Great conditions here today for the spectators, and you get a wonderful view of the cars going through this 2nd and 3rd gear twisty section before they head out of sight beneath the bridge. But for the drivers, the hard work continues. It keeps twisting and turning, and the strains on the shoulders and the neck are intense all the way through that back part of the track. Then they're onto this other fast section, not quite a straight, it's still curving, before they head round to complete a lap. There is Franchitti completing 14 laps with 69 still to go, and it's a demonstration drive from the Team Green drivers at the moment. They're both lapping in the 1 minute 8.6 or 1 minute 8.5 bracket. Both of them very consistent, within a tenth of a second of each other just about every lap, and they're putting on a tremendous show so far. Further down the field is Gilles de Ferran. He's in 7th place and under attack from the man he battled with for the win in Cleveland earlier on this year, and in fact to a certain extent in Portland as well. De Ferran won in Portland, but in Cleveland, Montoya had the edge over the Goodyear tired Walker Racing Valvoline car of Gilles de Ferran, and for the moment Montoya cannot find a way past the Brazilian. These two have been dicing fairly hard for a number of laps here. Lap times, they're both doing very similar lap times in the 1 minute 8.8 second bracket, and so far Montoya hasn't been able to find that little bit of an edge.
No, he hasn't been. It is awfully tough to pass. It's not a hugely wide track here, and a lot of undulations, a lot of twisty corners here. It's really tough to make a pass stick.
Dario Franchitti and Paul Tracy are leading them all at the moment, early stages. once again to mid-Ohio. Juan Montoya, there he is, just correcting the oversteer as he comes out of turn 9, still chasing after Jourdain. Let's take advantage of the onboard just to explain the lap a little bit. This is the last corner, the carousel as it's called. There's no banking, not like the Nürburgring carousel, but it's a tight corner. Across the start-finish line, or should I say just the finish line, where they start elsewhere on the track. This is turn 1, a very fast left-hander at about 130 miles an hour, and then changing up into 6th gear as they head up this backstretch, about 175. Back down the gears into the keyhole, long right-hander, down to about 65 miles an hour, then back on the power. 3rd, 4th, 5th gear, and then 6th gear as they head down the last part of this stretch, down to just about 190 miles an hour, back down to 2nd gear, and 90 miles an hour up the hill, down to 65 miles an hour. Again, you can see Montoya correcting the steering there. Little burst of acceleration, backs off, stays in 2nd gear, 70, now into 3rd gear. Changes up very quickly through that section. On the brakes hard to turn number 9, up over the crest, down again. Look at the movement there.
Did you see De Ferret in front of him? He got very sideways coming over there. So the cars go very light over that corner there, down into turn 9, and it's a really tricky corner because on the exit there's a pretty high curb, and then there's a wall just beyond that, so you don't want to get onto that curb. That can really throw the car into the wall. Very tricky little corner, that one.
So Montoya still struggling. We're not seeing the sort of performance this weekend that we've come to expect from the Colombian, and that's really because they have not found a setup that he is comfortable with. They've changed everything. They started with the car pretty soft on Friday. It was horrible. They stiffened it up massively on Saturday and in fact they couldn't run it then on Saturday. They ran it this morning in the warm-up and it was still horrible. So they've ended up with a sort of guesstimate setup which they're hoping will give them something they can work with, but it doesn't look as though Montoya is very happy with the way things are going. He's not making any progress. Meanwhile, further down the order, there is a man who's made a fair bit of progress, in fact.
Absolutely. Roberto Moreno, inside the last 5 laps, he first of all moved past Cristiano D'Amato and then also displaced Richie Hearn. So Roberto Moreno, after starting 19th, is up into 13th, as a very good drive indeed by Roberto Moreno, sitting in, of course, for Christian Fittipaldi, who was injured in a gateway testing crash a couple of weeks ago. And once again, super sub, doing a super job for Newman Haas Racing.
So right in behind Mimo Gidley now as they head up the backstretch. Well, this is the last part of the lap coming down towards the carousel. Looking at some of the stats on Moreno, starting, as you say, in 19th place and now up to 13th. But up front, Dario Franchitti is still in charge. He has completed 19 laps now. We're about 8 or so laps away from the first round of pit stops, I would imagine. And he has a 4-second advantage over his teammate Paul Tracy. And now down into the low 1 minute 8s. 1 minute 8.2 last time around. The fuel is burning off. The car is getting a little lighter. And that means he can go a few tenths of a second faster than he was doing in the early laps. Into the pits, opposite our commentary booth. I've just seen Michel Jourdain come in. There he is, in fact, in that pit lane, and it looks like a routine stop for Jourdain, a little bit earlier than we might have expected.
Yeah, certainly. 19 laps is way too soon. No, he chucks the water bottle and clearly got a problem. I think the right front, well, maybe not. They wave it back into the race. Not quite sure what's going on. A little bit of a miscommunication there, I think. But last couple of laps, he had been struggling a little bit. He made a mistake in the carousel, lost some time there, also lost a couple of positions to BJ Jones and Greg Moore. And so I think maybe the balance of the car had gone away somewhat, and Jourdain in for fresh tyres and a full set of fuel.
Tracy gained a couple of tenths of a second on that last lap. You see the gap had been up to 4 seconds between him and Franchitti. As they crossed the line just a second ago, it's out down to 3.8, but nothing really to worry about at this point. But look, what's interesting to me, Jeremy, is how quickly both Franchitti and Tracy have pulled away from Brian Herta. Now, Herta's still in 3rd place, but the gap is some 9 seconds between Tracy and Herta.
Yeah, you're right, and that certainly has continued to grow that gap. I thought it seemed to stabilise for a few laps, but since then the Team Cool Greens inexorably pulling away 2-3 tenths a lap, and as you say, Herta now in 3rd place, something over 9 seconds behind Tracy, and almost 12 and a half behind the race leader, Dario Franchitti, who comes past us one more time. 21 laps completed by Dario Franchitti.
And the gap remains almost identical this time. They record lap times to the same within a couple of hundredths of a second. We're riding with Juan Montoya as he changes up out of the final corner.
On the car is if you want any wing or anything on the stop.
And a comment from Chip Ganassi over the radio.
Do you want any wing on the stop? Half a turn front. Half. 10-4, half a turn up.
And there you are. Not only does he have to control 800 horsepower, think about how to try and find a way past Jourdain, but he also has to communicate with his team boss Chip Ganassi as to whether he requires a little bit more front wing on the first pit stop. Watching an interesting view here, the onboard in the bottom left of your picture is still with Montoya, and the top right of your picture, there is Montoya right behind Jourdain. So you've got a double perspective of the same battle here. Montoya with the behind the wheel view, and then from the helicopter shot over top. A really interesting way to look at this Mid-Ohio sports car course.
And it really is a great racetrack here. Very, very scenic, a good crowd on hand, and there really is some spectacular viewing here for the spectators. It draws a very enthusiastic and very knowledgeable crowd here in central Ohio.
So around they go to complete the 22nd lap. That was across the line. You saw them just a moment as Montoya continues on his way. Franchitti leads this race, and still the gap between him and Tracy about the same, although in fact Tracy a bit faster on that last lap. I wonder if Franchitti made a mistake or his tyres are going off, because a 1 minute 8.8 that time as opposed to a 1 minute 8.4 on that last lap from Paul Tracy. So we'll see when they make their pit stops. Of course, fuel consumption is fairly crucial in this race, and it's also a very tight pit lane. The pit boxes, the area that the cars must stop in the pits here in Mid-Ohio, is the shortest that they encounter at any of the racetracks throughout the year. So we've seen accidents in the past here in the pits, and they will have to be very cautious when they come in.
Yeah, there is a minimum size of the pit boxes as mandated by CART, and this is the minimum size that the sanctioning body will allow. So there is enough room to make the pit stops. It's not really that much of a problem, but it is somewhat tighter here than some of the other tracks that do have a longer pit lane and can therefore have slightly longer pit stalls.
Brian Herter, there he is, still running in third place. Tony Carnan right behind him, and then Jimmy Vasser in fifth. Helio Castroneves still running sixth. Jourdain in seventh place. Juan Montoya in eighth. Max Papis ninth. Then it's Michael Andretti 10th. Robby Gordon 11th. And Mimo Gidley is in the last point scoring position at this stage after 23 laps. Welcome back to the action here at Mid-Ohio in the pit lane. Not too much action just yet, but you can bet it's going to get very, very busy down there soon. 25 laps have been completed. Team Cool Green are watching their two drivers lead this race very comfortably indeed. And in fact, Tracy, over the last few laps, has just eked away at that gap between himself and Franchitti, and it's down to just under 3 seconds now. It's going to be a tremendous battle between these two, and their pit stops will be crucial.
And no question about it, the more consistent of the two at this stage in the race as they're nearing the end of their first fuel stint is Paul Tracy. Dario Franchitti has put some very quick laps in, but he's been up and down a little bit. Tracy, on the other hand, has really been consistent.
Meanwhile, we look back from the onboard camera with Jourdain, and that's the view still of Juan Montoya. And there you saw Montoya's car slithering around quite a lot. As we say, they are getting fairly close to the first round of pit stops now, and that means that these tyres have done most of their work, and the cars will be sliding more at this stage. The car is lighter, it has less fuel aboard, but the tyre wear will be a factor. And Jourdain still holds on to 7th place. Behind him, that little train of cars, which includes Montoya. Then behind him is Max Papis, then it's Michael Andretti, Robby Gordon, Mimo Gidley, and at the back of the train, really, it's Roberta Moreno in the Newman Haas Swift, standing in this weekend once again for Christian Fittipaldi. So there is Dario Franchitti, our race leader, and 3.1 seconds the advantage last time around, and he's got to try and keep that advantage as big as possible, but bearing in mind that fuel consumption later in the race will be absolutely critical as well. I'm just looking out of our pit box, out of our commentary box rather, window. One or two teams beginning to make plans down there. Robby Gordon's team looks as though they're getting ready for a pit stop. Michel Jourdain's team, and also the All-American Racers team for Vuelta Sales. So we will be seeing first round pit stops coming up, but within the next few minutes, I think, as Tracy continues to chase after his teammate.
And Jimmy Vasser, there is Jimmy Vasser. He is the first of the leaders to pull onto pit lane, Ben.
So this is the Ganassi crew at work now with Jimmy Vasser first of all. Looks as though they're going to get Montoya in a lap or so later. Tyres go on, that looks clean. The refueling, we've seen a few problems. Bit of a front wing change. Adjustment made on the front wing, you could see that cleanly. No problems on the stop for Jimmy Vasser, and now a few more cars entering, including Robby Gordon. So, fuel aboard. This is Robby Gordon in the Swift chassis. Next weekend, he'll be racing the Eagle chassis in Chicago. He's done a deal with Dan Gurney. Now, he hasn't stalled it yet, don't worry. The starter is put there in precaution. He gets away, no problems for Robby Gordon.
That's right, a good clean stop there. This is Richie Hearn now in the pits there for the Budweiser John Della Penna's team. Good stop for Richie Hearn. He had been running in 14th place, and there he goes back through turn 1 and back out onto the racetrack.
So he gets away cleanly. There is Franchitti, and he actually had to get past Robby Gordon there. Now the leader finds himself getting into some traffic because of the first pit stop. First time he's had to deal with any traffic, and that means it could change things around a little bit as Tracy continues to hunt down Dario Franchitti. Franchitti hasn't won at this racetrack, of course, in the past, nor indeed has Paul Tracy, in spite of several second places on this circuit. Now, we ride on board with Montoya again. Again, you can see having to correct the oversteer. And Montoya, perhaps the fact that he's stuck behind Gilles de Ferran, he's working on just saving fuel. It looked to me as though he was changing up a bit early there, Jeremy. Just at this point, there's not much else he can do. So I guess all you can do is try and save a bit of fuel. That's
right, and I hope that will work in his favour towards the end of the race. If he has a bit of a fuel margin towards the end, he can turn up the fuel mixture, get a richer mixture, more horsepower, and try and get past a couple of guys in the later stages of the event.
Cristiano D'Amata leaves the pits now. Here we go. First of the...
Wide open. You can get right onto the mark this time. Square to the wall. We want you square to the wall.
Let's listen to the radio. I'll interrupt
the wall, right on the mark.
Interrupt myself to listen to the radio. It's great to hear from Barry Green talking to Paul Tracy as he makes this pit stop. So the two Team Green cars stopping at separate laps. 11.7 seconds. And away goes Paul Tracy.
Great stop by Team Cool Green. There is Brian Herter also back into the fray with service on the Shell car. That is Team Rahal. Gets his man out in the back into the race. And Tony Kanaan is going slowly along pit lane. This is on board Tony Kanaan, and he is just coasting into his pit stall.
Get the starter ready.
They've cut in a little bit too close. It's out of fuel, and the crew has to run out and push him in. That is a disaster for the McDonald's Championship Racing team.
That really is. That's going to drop him so far down the order. And after having a little bit of luck in Michigan, he said it's been an unlucky season in many ways. Well, the bad luck has struck him again here at the team's home circuit. Now then, here comes Dario Franchitti into the pits. The man who was leading before this round of pit stops. He's following PJ Jones down the pits at the moment. Let's see if we get a chance to listen up on the radio as well.
Reset the fuel. Left limiter on the way out.
Reset the fuel. And then the speed limiter on the way out. Absolutely crucial. You'll pick up a drive-through penalty if you speed in pit lane. Slightly longer stop than Tracy, though. Definitely he was in the pits for slightly longer. And Montoya now in right behind him. One of the best teams in the business go to work.
Tires are on. Ready?
Front wing change.
Go, go, go.
And a great stop once again from the Ganassi crew. And that pit crew on the number 4 car is running third at the moment in the pit crew challenge, where they actually score points depending on how fast they do their stops. And they've been doing extremely well this year. Max Pappas' crew, I believe, leading that at the moment. Greg Moore's crew also one of the fastest crews in pit lane. And there we are, suitably enough, he comes in for his pit stop. Just the one Forsyth entry this weekend with Patrick Carpentier injured, out of action. And this time a clean stop. And I'm glad to say, so far, Jeremy, no repeat of that horrible incident we saw last year when Greg Moore hit the back of Andre Ribeiro's car in those very, very tight pits.
That's absolutely right, man, and good stops all around, really. I think a couple of people lost a bit of ground. I think Mimo Gidley lost a couple of places, perhaps, but he's still running pretty well there. And he fell behind Richie Hearn on those stops, and Robby Gordon also was able to get ahead of him. But there are the two leaders. That is Paul Tracy, turns into turn 1. It's on lap 32 now, and you can see the gap it's less than it was before by quite a significant margin.
1.6 seconds the gap between the two of them now. It was 3.5 seconds more or less before they came in for that pit stop. We saw that Franchitti seemed to be stopped for a fraction longer than Paul Tracy, but he did still manage to get out in front. Third place is Roberta Moreno, who has not yet made his pit stop. He's gone a long way on 1 tank of fuel.
Yeah, that is amazing. He was running and he was making up ground as well, wasn't he, in those early stages of the race? A tremendous drive by Roberto Moreno.
Well, I hope he makes it round the end of this lap. You sort of begin to wonder, don't you? The crew is ready down there in pit lane, and let's hope that they haven't done their sums wrong. Of course, they have constant feedback on the fuel consumption of the engine from the telemetry. The telemetry sending signals to the huge aerials behind the pit lane, which pick up loads of data from on-car, and that tells them how much fuel the engine has used in the race so far, and they should therefore be able to calculate that he's okay. And indeed, he's made it round to pit entry, and there he is in this time. He can't go any more than 32 laps, but Roberto Moreno has really done a fine job in the early part of this race to conserve fuel, and he still managed to overtake people.
That is remarkable. A great effort by him once again here. A great drive by Roberto Moreno. In for service here. The Newman House crew, that is Kevin Chambers and the boys there at work on that car. The tyres are changed, the fuel, they're just waiting for the last of that 35 gallons of methanol, and there, a pad on the wheel, and off goes Roberto Moreno. Another good stop by Newman House Racing.
I tell you what, Jeremy, I was talking to him yesterday, and he said one of the main problems that he's had jumping into the Newman Haas crew, into the Newman Haas car after driving for Pat West, is he's got to be very careful that when he comes in the pits, he doesn't stop at the Pat West pit, because he's been used to seeing the Blundell board. It means for him, and he saw the Blundell board in Detroit, and he very nearly stopped in the Pat West pit.
Well, in actual fact, Blundell's car had different colours in Detroit last weekend. The first practice as he drove past the boys and missed them completely. But meanwhile, there is that is Tony Kanaan there. After that horrible miscue in the pits, he is back in 22nd position.
Oh, what a disappointment. And that just shows you, when you get the sums wrong, when you get the fuel readings wrong, if you take too big a gamble, then you can lose so much time. Look at the pit in, pit out. Well, we just saw there briefly, Kanaan, the main loser in that first round of stops.
Yeah, and what a disappointment for Tony Kanaan. He'd been testing here so well. He really did. The car was absolutely flying in testing, and he was hopeful of a great run this afternoon. He was running well. He was there in 4th place and trying to make a move now on Scott Pruitt. That is the battle, in fact, for 20th place. He's already passed Gualter Salas, and now Scott Pruitt next in his list of people to get past, to get up again towards the front. But boy, it's a tall order from the bottom end of the top 20.
Mark Blundell has just made another pit stop. He's out of sequence with the others, but he can afford to use as much fuel as possible. It looks like they're going for a 3-stop race, and now they put on a full load of fuel, keeps the engine running, and there away goes. That's a revised colour scheme. I believe that they're due to go back to the normal Motorola colour scheme next week in Chicago, but for the second race, it's the digital DNA scheme for this weekend. Franchitti leads. His advantage is 2.6 seconds after 33 laps. Back at Mid-Ohio, we're getting used to this view from on board Juan Montoya, but big news about Juan Montoya, because he's now in 3rd position. 3rd place. He was one of the biggest gainers in that first round of pit stops, and now he's up into 3rd position. I can't quite know how they managed that, Jeremy, but once again, that target team, fantastic.
Yeah, it was a great pit stop, but you know, this boy, he's so good on cold tyres. He comes out of the pits and he's on the pace straight away, and he really throws the car around. Great car control, and on cold tyres, again, I say, they do not have tyre warmers in this series, and he is sensational on cold tyres. That's where he makes up the most of the time, on that outlap out of the pits. And again, he's absolutely flying. Now, 1 minute 7.8 last time around. That is the quickest lap of the race, and that was more than a second quicker than the 2 race leaders.
Interesting, because they put a bit of front wing on that last pit stop. Now, maybe they found something that really works in terms of helping him with the setup of the car. Meanwhile, Dario Franchitti has got himself into a little bit of traffic, trying to find a way past Luis Garcia in the second of the Hogan cars. Garcia runs down in 23rd position, so a long way down. But of course, it's dealing with traffic that could decide the outcome of this race, as he has just a 3-second advantage at the moment over Paul Tracy. And Garcia, one of the less experienced, shall we say, racers in this field, so an area to watch out for. Now, we've been joined in the commentary box by a man who's not not actually raced in Champ Cars as yet, although he'd very much like to, has tested them in the past, and he is a Le Mans winner. Tom Christensen, congratulations on your victories in the past, and it's great to see you here at Mid-Ohio. Are you trying to get yourself into one of these cars? Is that the plan? Is that why you're here this weekend?
Yeah, I'm considering very much. I'm here to in America to show my face with all the team owners and see the race. I've not really I've tested, but I haven't been at the race meeting all the team owners before. And I'm here to say I'm very serious about my racing, and I'm quick, so I would like to get into the series next year, definitely.
Now, you tested for Bettenhausen, I believe it was, a few years ago. What was that experience like? Was that interesting for you?
Yeah, that was really good. We had one day each, and I tested with some other drivers, and I was quickest at the test, but for sponsor reason, and I think my dialect didn't fit with them. I didn't, but I have not forgot how it felt like to drive them. And since the 2 years I've been with Honda and with BMW for the Le Mans, when we won Sebring this year, I felt I really want to come and join a series here in the States.
So we're seeing a little bit of the invasion of the Vikings at the moment. We've got Jan Magnussen, he's out, fellow Dane in the series now, and perhaps a chance for you to join him.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think there's any particular maximum of number of Danes who could participate here, so I'm looking forward, and it looks promising.
Just looking at the race for a moment, what are your brief thoughts on what you've seen so far? I mean, we're just watching Montoya for a second. In fact, there we are with your countrymate Jan Magnussen. He's doing a fine job at the moment. He's running down in 16th position, only his second outing, of course, this year in Champ Cars. And they are not easy cars to drive either. They're not something you could just jump in and go quick straight away. No,
I mean, particularly for Jan. I mean, he drove a Swift the last time, and he's in the Reynard now. He finds much better. He finds it better and easier to drive. He's not. He think he could have gone quick on Saturday where it rained. So this morning in the warm-up, they had worked on the setup with the roll centers, and he's not. Still not perfect in the car, so, but by more time he will come up the grip, I'm sure. But I mean, I'm impressed by Franchitti. He's driving very smooth and very well. And then the move that Tracy pulled on Herta very early on, I mean, that was very good commitment. I was there at the corner watching it. That was really strong. But Montoya is on a roll now again, so it's very interesting.
Look at this, Tony Kanan's just got his way past PJ Jones. That's Jan Magnussen's teammate, PJ Jones, driving in place of Fernandez this weekend in the Ducati car. And Tony Kanan, who had that dreadful pit stop first time around when he coasted out of fuel into his pit box, well, at least he's gained a position, but it's only put him into 18th place, Jeremy, so there's a long way to go.
There is a long way to go, Ben, and next in his sights will be Greg Moore. And right now we're looking on board with Tony Kanan. We can't really see Greg Moore, certainly not as he goes. Well, there he is, a flash of him as he comes into the carousel turn here, and the car's there pull almost 3 Gs through the carousel turn, accelerate over to almost 160 miles an hour on his short straight, and then just that very quick turn. What's a great corner, turn 1.
Yeah, and we're just carrying on looking at the onboard pictures. We're getting some superb pictures here today, and you can just ride with him for a second. Let's just sit back a moment and enjoy the ride as he goes out onto the backstretch. And just remember here, he's building up to 190 miles an hour. That was the view from Tony Kanan. Now we're looking at the view from Jan Magnussen. Really, it goes up and down a lot, this track. Tom Christensen with us. Tom, have you actually raced around this track yourself?
No, but I would love to.
It's a great looking track, isn't it? You've obviously you competed on some American tracks with your sports car experience and that type of thing. But I know the drivers say that this is one of the most physically demanding tracks in the country.
Yeah, and a lot of exit of the corners where you're normally just committed to a flat throttle. The camber changes and what do you call it? You don't really get it on television how much change there is in the up and downs, but they really got a loose back end in 2 corners. And Jan was talking about that being one of the problems for him.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great to hear from you, and good luck in all your attempts to get into Champ Cars.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for being here.
All right, so let's just concentrate once again on the battle that's going on track. It's Franchitti who leads, 1.6 seconds the advantage over Paul Tracy. Juan Montoya still running in third. There you can see a few cars just getting past Michel Jourdain, so nothing major going on. That's Michel Jourdain, a back marker at the moment. So it's Franchitti, Tracy, Montoya third, Herta fourth, Vassar fifth, Helio Castroneves still there in sixth place with De Ferran, Papis, Andretti and Moreno behind him. Welcome back once again to Mid-Ohio, and our coverage continues as Juan Montoya chases down the race leaders. He is the fastest man on track by about a second at the moment. It's an amazing performance this from Montoya, absolutely flying. He moved up into third place after the first round of pit stops, and now he's been on a real charge ever since, and the gap between himself and Tracy is now down to just 4 seconds.
Yeah, remarkable drive. Not so long ago it was 12 seconds on lap 35. The gap was 12.2 seconds from second to third. Now it's 4 seconds exactly, and Montoya absolutely flying. However, of course, he now has a couple of lap cars to deal with. That, I think, is the Eagle of Gualter Salas, and right in front of the Eagle of Gualter Salas, having actually passed him a couple of laps ago, is Luis Garcia Jr. So certainly now Montoya has to deal with the traffic that the two Team Core green cars had to deal with 4 or 5 laps ago. He looks to the inside into turn 1. That isn't going to work. He needs to make sure he gets a good run out of here and get him into the keyhole into turn 2, and he's not close enough. So now he has to concentrate on braking cleanly here and getting a good run off the corner. Don't get close, too close behind Gualter Salas into there. You need to get the power on coming out of the corner. The power of the Honda against the Toyota engine, and clearly, yeah, you can see the difference there. There goes Montoya straight past Gualter Salas, who actually, I think, lifted off a little bit to make sure that Montoya had no difficulty getting past. So a good professional move by Gualter Salas.
Yes, I think you're right, Jeremy. The way he just suddenly disappeared backwards, I think he just eased off the throttle a fraction there, and that's allowed Montoya through. The gap was up a little bit on that last lap between Tracy and Montoya because of dealing with the traffic. Meanwhile, let's look back just a tiny bit further back down the road, and there is Brian Herta, who's running fourth. He started on the front row, battled in the early stages with Paul Tracy, dropped back a little bit, but he's still there now in fourth place with Jimmy Vassar right behind him. So 2 Americans running fourth and fifth. Helio Castroneves in the Hogan racing car is not far behind them in the Lola Mercedes, that is, of course, and he had a finish at last week in Detroit. Detroit was a rather bizarre finish for him because he crossed the line with at least one wheel hanging off the car after contact with Juan Montoya, but it was his first finish in about 6 races, so that at least has given the team something to smile about. And at the moment, Castroneves running very consistently. He's in the 1 minute 8 second bracket and doing a fine job. Now, there are the leaders, the 2 leaders virtually together now. Tracy is right behind Franchitti as they all try to cut their way through the back markers. So exciting stuff indeed for the 2 Team Green entries, and they've got to now find their way past these slower cars as safely and as cleanly as possible, but there are genuinely only 2, at the most 3 overtaking spots at this track, and even when you're dealing with a slower car, it's tough. And in fact, it's Mark Blundell that they're behind, and Blundell's been putting in some quick laps, but he's got himself stuck behind PJ Jones.
That's exactly right, Ben, and that's forced from now, and you can see as they went past our commentary booth here, we're right by the start-finish line, and Dario Franchitti was gesturing to the starting line there, and Jim Swintal, the official starter, throw out the blue flag. He needs to let me pass. I'm the race leader, and I need to clear path. I've got a guy on my tail, and I do not want to be held up by these 2 slower cars.
That's right. So, of course, Mark Blundell, who's managed to close up the gap to PJ Jones, and he won't want to lose too much time on Jones, but on the other hand, he will not want to get in the way. There is Franchitti. Oh, no, Franchitti cannot get past. No, in fact, it is, yes, it's still Blundell. He's trying to, no, that's PJ Jones, that is. PJ Jones, Blundell already got past PJ Jones, so it was Jones who shut the door on Franchitti there, and Franchitti therefore sees Tracy filling his mirrors again.
Yeah, it's good move by Blundell to get past PJ Jones. He'd been trapped up behind him for an awfully long time, and now can the leaders get past? PJ Jones is, well, he's used to being to towards the back end of the field when he was driving for Dan Gurney's team, and so he is used to being a back marker. He knows that he needs to let the leaders through. He's in a good car this weekend with Adrian Fernandez's car, but he has not got the best out of it. He spun off the road on Friday in qualifying, started way at the back and has stayed at the back, has made no progress whatsoever, and at this stage in the game he needs to let those two leaders get on with their race, because look at the top of the screen, that is Juan Montoya. He is only 2 seconds behind Paul Tracy and closing very, very fast indeed.
Would you believe it? Montoya has used this absolutely perfectly and just 2.2 seconds behind Franchitti, let alone Tracy. There goes Franchitti. Now he's going to find a way past PJ Jones, and it should be fairly straightforward, although Jones still seems to make him work fairly hard for it. Now Tracy has got to get past Jones, and Montoya closing all the time. Tracy does get down the inside there, and that makes the move stick as they go through turn 6. So now Montoya will have that task, but all that has really, really helped the Colombian, who, remember, is just 6 points behind Franchitti in the championship, 20 points for a victory, 16 points for second place. The championship race very, very open at this 2/3 distance in the series. There, Montoya locking up the rears a bit as he tries to find a way past PJ Jones. Across the line they go. That is 48 laps now in the books, 35 laps still to go, and Montoya now should have an opportunity here on this straight leading up to turn number 3. What is PJ doing? He's almost battling it. No, he isn't now, finally, but he seemed to cover the inside for a moment. At last, Montoya goes through, and the top 3 cars then separated by just over 3 seconds.
Great stuff here, what the race this is building up into. And the first clean lap there that Dario Franchitti had was a 1 minute 8.491. He hadn't been able to do anything like that pace for the previous 5 laps because he was held up by those slower cars. But here we are on board once again with Juan Montoya through the S's at the bottom end of the racetrack here, and this undulating, very tricky technical section of the track here. Well, the G-forces here, this is turn 9, slides the car over there. You can just hear the engine revs up a little bit as the rear wheels go light over that crest in the hill. Another uphill blind corner there. You cannot see the apex of the corner as you turn in, coming now into the carousel, and you can see that car in front of him is Paul Tracy, the second place car.
Great race this is turning into. We are over half distance. In fact, we're about 2/3 distance in the race, and we have a 3-way battle between the top teams. Team Ganassi, which really dominated the first part of this season, and Team Green, which in the second part of the year has really come good. Into the pits again comes Michel Jourdain Jr. He made an early pit stop in this race, and therefore he has to be the first in again on the second round of pit stops. But we're not expecting the leaders to come in for another 10 laps or so yet, and that gives Franchitti some time to try and open up the advantage. What we don't know, of course, Jeremy, is how much fuel each of them is using in this battle, and at the end of the race that could become the crucial issue.
That's very true indeed, Ben, but I think they're probably all running a pretty similar strategy at this point in the race. They know how far there is to go. There have been, of course, no full course cautions, so one have to hope that they haven't used up too much fuel in the early stages of this race. Of course, if we look back to the last real natural terrain road course we were at, Road America, also that race went caution free. Whoa, look at that, a big sideways slide there for Juan Montoya. Is he trying?
I think he's trying very hard indeed to close up that gap, and he's got it down a bit further. It's only 2.4 seconds between himself and Franchitti, and suddenly Montoya, whose weekend seemed to be going badly through qualifying and then a rainy day on Saturday, which meant he could not improve on that 8th place qualifying. I saw him yesterday afternoon. He was obviously deeply frustrated with the handling of the car in spite of the hard work the team was doing to make it better. But suddenly now in this race they seem to have hit the sweet spot just by adding that bit of front wing that they did at the first stop. He seems to have found something on this second set of tyres, and he is absolutely flying. Back with Dario Franchitti then as he goes through the sweeps and curves at the back part of the circuit and accelerates out of turn number 9. The gap he had last time around was 1.4 seconds, and we'll see in a few moments if he's managed to open up that lead at all. Tricky braking here, down into the tight right-hander at the carousel, and then he'll come out of that and cross the line, giving us an opportunity to see if it's still a 1.4 second gap. Yes, it is. So the distance between these top 3 remains consistent at this point in the race.
Meanwhile, Mark Blundell, remember Mark Blundell, he was right ahead of these two leaders, wasn't he, not too long ago? He was almost holding them up when he was dicing there with PJ Jones, but there was no sign of Mark Blundell in the picture. And that's not because he's been into the pits, that's because he's turned in some very quick laps indeed, and has actually managed to pull away from this battle for the lead in his quest to remain on the lead lap. So Mark Blundell running very well. He may be back in 20th place. He sure as heck isn't where he wants to be, but at least he's running well. There we are now, that is Michael Andretti. He is going up the hill there into turn 2, otherwise known as the keyhole turn. It's a pretty tight corner there. You've got to get a good line off the corner to get onto this, the longest straight on this 2.25 mile racetrack. You've got to get onto that straight quickly. This is a terminal velocity up to almost 190 miles an hour, as Mikey knows all too well, because it all went wrong for him at this point last year.
It did, in a big way. You remember the barrel roll that he suffered into the gravel trap there. He hit the back of PJ Jones's car, and that wasn't PJ's fault. He had a piece of debris stuck in his steering, which meant he couldn't get out of the way. And Andretti suffered a horrible-looking accident, but he was thankfully unharmed. All that can be said for the car, which was fairly well destroyed. Meanwhile, up front, 52 laps have been completed by Dario Franchitti. Paul Tracy in second, and look, Juan Montoya now right behind Paul Tracy, and within distance to pick up the slipstream at this stage. Down the back stretch, down towards turn number 4, which at the beginning of the race was the first corner. Oh, look at Montoya, so quick in on the brakes. He was so fast in, he couldn't get the power back on, but it didn't seem to lose him any time, and he's still right in behind Paul Tracy. Wonderful as they go up over the rise again. Back on the brakes into turn 9. Watch the off-camber exit here. The back end of the car wants to step out, but Montoya keeps it tidy, keeps it smooth, trying to look after those rear tyres. Try not to let them get too worn in the mid-part of a stint. Closer again, a little bit under braking to the back of Paul Tracy's car. This time across the line, 1.4 seconds separates the top 3 cars. Tracy's got closer to Franchitti, and Montoya's closer to both of them.
And the second round of pit stops are going to be absolutely crucial, I think. If Montoya cannot make the pass before the round of pit stops, that's what it will boil down to. We've seen it is difficult to pass on this racetrack. It's not impossible, it's difficult. Well, Montoya, he's known for trying the odd move here and there, but you know, that first pit stop of his was sensational. If that target Chip Ganassi crew can do the same amount of work, and he can get the most out of those tyres when they are cold on that first lap out of the pits, well, maybe he can take the lead there.
Yes, it could be a battle in the pits, it could be a battle on the track, a bit of both, I think, at this point, as Montoya just gets that little bit closer to the Canadian's car. Dario Franchitti will know how close Montoya is. The battle in the championship between Franchitti and Montoya, and just 6 points between them at this stage in the championship chase. Back out across the line to complete 54 laps now, and Montoya again tucked in behind Tracy, but can he find a way of actually overtaking? All of them absolutely on the limit. You could see how they were using the curb out of turn 1, but no, Montoya cannot get close enough to mount a challenge, and if anything, Tracy is making sure that he's close behind Dario Franchitti. Under a second his advantage from Paul Tracy. Montoya tucked in third position. He's made up incredible amounts of ground in this race, having started in 8th place. Got stuck behind Gilles de Ferran in the early stages, but now he is right with the 2 leaders as they continue round, and we're looking forward to the final round of pit stops coming up fairly soon now, I would think. 1 or 2 crews actually coming out into the pit lane. Robby Gordon's crew getting into the pit lane, so it will be fairly soon before these leaders come in. Yes, and indeed into the pits comes Dario Franchitti. Franchitti is into the pits, so this is the next round of pit stops beginning. Paul Tracy stays out in front now, and it is Dario Franchitti who is the first of the leaders to come in.
Absolutely crucial stop now for Kyle Moyer and the boys on the number 27 Team Cool Green Reynard Honda. 4 fresh Firestone tyres, 35 gallons of fuel, and then he will get back into the race, and they just agonising wait, 12.2 seconds for Dario Franchitti. It's a good stop there, and look, Juan Montoya making a move on Paul Tracy.
Trying to go around the outside, and he's going to do it. Juan Montoya gets around the outside. and he's gone through. He's done it again. Juan Montoya takes the lead of the race at Mid-Ohio, and the Ganassi driver has fought his way up from 8th position, got a great pit stop, moved up the order, and now he takes the lead of the race as Franchitti came into the pits on that lap. But remember, both of them have to make their stops. Franchitti has already stopped. How quickly? Oh, somebody's off. Somebody's out. Let's see if we can spot. We think it's Al Unser Jr. through the dust. It is Al Unser Jr. in the Lola for Team Penske, and he is out of the race by the looks of things, as other front runners into the pits, including Robby Gordon. Well, it's all happening, isn't it? And it looks as though these two have stayed out for another lap. You know, it looks as though Dario was shaking his head a little bit when he came into the pits just now. I wonder if that's because they didn't get the sort of fuel mileage that they wanted, or whether they had a problem putting enough fuel in last time. I'm not sure, but it does seem odd that he had to be in a lap earlier, or in fact 2 laps earlier than anyone else. Looking at a replay here of little Al, and he just basically went straight on, didn't he? Ow, at turn number 1. Doesn't look as though the impact was too heavy.
No, here's another angle. They're looking back from turn 2, back towards turn 1. Then you can see exit stage right goes the Marlboro car. And that's a very strange accident indeed. I'm actually looking out for Jimmy Vasser. Haven't seen his car come through yet either.
Well, we'll keep an eye out for that. Al Unser Jr. is out of his car safely and gets behind the wall, so looks as though he's okay. He's got a little bit of a limp there. Meanwhile, Montoya still on track as we wait to see when he comes in, and he stayed out a bit longer. But Tracy, we believe, has come into the pits. Yes, there he is.
Wide open, mate.
And I'll tell you what, I think this is going to be absolutely crucial. Juan Montoya, he stays out on the road. That means he can turn in a couple of very, very fast laps. And when these guys come out of the pits, they have to, it'll take them a couple of laps to get those tyres up to temperature. Those couple of fast laps that Montoya's going to have in hand over these two, I believe, may well be crucial.
Another good stop from Tracy, a little bit quicker than Franchitti by about half a second. Now, where is Franchitti? Franchitti comes past our commentary position. There's Franchitti as Tracy exits the pit. They come out. Oh, and a spinner. That's Garcia. That's Luis Garcia in the second Hogan entry. Now, that's right on the edge of the track, not quite on line, so they can get past him safely enough. But can they get that car out of the way without bringing a safety car out? He may even still have the engine running, possibly. But I think we will see Montoya coming in this time. And let's see if we can listen out for Chip Ganassi talking to his man on the radio. Let's see if he can. Yes, he's coming in. Now, let's listen up here. Watch that speed limit, 50 miles.
Yeah, nothing fancy.
Nothing fancy, says Chip. Well, quite right too. And of course, last week it all went wrong in Detroit.
Slow down.
Not Juan Montoya's problem. It was actually a team mistake. Chip was calling the pit stops, and it all went a bit wrong. They didn't call him in time.
Tires are on. Ready? Go, go, go!
Beautiful stop again. A little bit slower than Paul Tracy's in terms of time. Very clean though. And there he comes out. Look, he's ahead of the 2 Team Green cars. It's Tracy ahead of Franchitti now, and they have indeed seen Montoya go ahead and stay ahead.
Yep.
He's got past both of them.
And it's a function of staying out one more lap on fresh tyres. That's what won it there in terms of the battle between the 2 Team called Green mates. And we see one, Luis Garcia Jr.'s car still stuck there at the keyhole turn on the outside. And Paul Tracy, he was able to do that one more quick lap, got him ahead of Dario Franchitti, and Montoya made another one extra lap again on fresh hot tyres. And that is such a quick lap coming into the pits, and that was what got him the advantage.
Andretti had a slow stop. Apparently, almost had a repeat of what happened in Milwaukee. The car started to move before they'd got everything unplugged. So that was a bit worrying for Michael Andretti. Came in reasonably well up the order, but he lost some places there. Montoya is the race leader here at Mid-Ohio. Stay with us. Sports car course. We're midway between Columbus and Cleveland in Ohio, and it is a very popular racetrack for the enthusiasts, this one, because it provides some tremendous spectating. I'm glad to say that they've got some weather to enjoy it today, because on Saturday for qualifying they barely saw a car out there. In fact, Juan Montoya was one of the few cars to go out in that wet session. And interestingly enough,
with the boost, John.
he spent a bit of time working on how much fuel consumption they had when running around behind a pace car.
Yes, he did. That's right. during the yellow. He was during the wet session there in qualifying yesterday afternoon, just cruising around at sort of 60-70 miles an hour, as you say, simulating the pace car position and just trying to get the fuel mapping right so they use up as least amount of fuel as possible.
Now, Juan Montoya leads at the moment at Mid-Ohio, but it hasn't all gone well for him on the road courses and street courses of recent races. Funnily enough, he was expected to perform well on the road courses, and he has performed well. It's really been bad luck that has prevented him scoring on some of the road tracks. For example, places like Road America, places like Detroit last week as well. Detroit, of course, last week he had a very comfortable advantage, and it was only because the Ganassi team failed to bring him in at precisely the right moment. He stayed out on track. That really was the beginning of his problems when he looked to be heading for yet another victory in Detroit. Let's just take a little look back over what's happened to Juan Montoya over some of those last few road course races. As the Ganassi team there, Mo Nunn on the far left, the veteran race engineer, masterminding another performance here from Montoya. This is what happened at Road America a few weeks ago now, when he had a comfortable lead and he lost any gears. Then in Toronto he had this accident with Jourdain, and then of course it went wrong last week in Detroit when hit by Helio Castroneves.
We gave away too many points so far. You know, we could have, you know, maybe have 50-point lead by now, and by silly things we just gave away the points, and we have to fix that up.
We look at that as a real challenge, so now we've got something to prove. Everybody's morale's up. I mean, now we've really got to go out there and show them we can do it.
Well, they seem to be doing that, I have to say. Rob Hill with prophetic words, perhaps, because there is Juan Montoya showing them how to do it once again, and this time from 8th place on the grid.
Yeah, sensational drive by the young Colombian driver.
Let's go down to the pits and hear from Michel Jourdain.
Get him back out, and then a situation now where apparently they just weren't getting fuel pickup on the course. Steve Horn says he doesn't know exactly what the problem is, but it's a major one, and obviously it's ended their day. And it's great disappointment because this team is based in Hilliard, Ohio, about an hour 15 minutes from the track. They had brought in all the family members from the team to enjoy this weekend here, all rooting for Tony, who started in the second row. They were 180 strong, and they've run into a lot of frustration.
Gary Gerald just updating us there with the Tony Kanaan story. I'm sorry about that. Thought it was Jourdain. Now we hear from Michel Jourdain.
You've had kind of a nightmare afternoon. Why?
Yeah, it's been really tough. I don't know, I guess the pickup of the fuel tank wasn't working properly because I had to, it was a big misfire every, I don't know, like when the tank got like down to 22 gallons, I had to come in because it was a big misfire. So it was hard to run full tank of fuel all day long. And then at the end, the gearbox broke, so it was.
Thank you very much, Michel. Al Unser Jr. just went by us, incidentally, guys, and we hollered at him, and he said he was going back to the transporter trailer. We can't get a signal from that particular area, so hopefully maybe we can catch up with him later.
So Michel Jourdain, gearbox failure again.
Yeah, that's disappointing for the Peyton Coyne crew. And Tony Kanaan, you know, that mystifies me. That should allow. Well, there's a problem. What's happening there? That's Roberto Moreno signaling some drivers to go past him there. Maybe he somehow inadvertently made up some positions, or maybe he was. I think probably what happened is there was a pit lane infraction, and he, because of that, will have to drop to the back of the line. So that's what he's doing. He's waving all the other guys past, and a great shame. But down to the pits, and Tony Kanaan.
It's fuel related, I understand?
Yeah. Well, we don't know what happened, and before the first pit stop, we ran out of fuel, and before the second one, one lap before the second one, we still ran out of fuel again. So it's something with the fuel pickup. I don't believe our guys made a mistake. I think it's something wrong with the fuel tank. So it's a tough luck. I was running pretty good, top 4 all day. So it's tough. Let's go to Chicago and do it again, like probably what we did in Michigan.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The winner of Michigan, of course, in that breathtaking final lap when Max Papis ran out of fuel. Juan Montoya is in control. There are 20 laps still to go here, so don't go away. The pace car light is out. That means that the restart is about to take place. They've got about a third of a lap to complete here at Mid-Ohio. We have 19 laps to go in round 14 of the FedEx Championship Series. Juan Montoya, who lies second in the championship at the moment, leads the race. In second place is Paul Tracy. Third is Dario Franchitti. And these three really have been the story of the race so far. Brian Herter still runs in 4th place, but apparently not quite able to match that same pace of these three Reynard Hondas ahead. And I think that the battle for the win is going to come between these three, but will they all survive to the checkered flag? That's the question.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Paul Tracy, he wants to get another win under his belt. He also wants to finish the race. He knows he's been scoring points very well indeed. And look, tries to get a jump there on Juan Montoya as the green is waving.
Yes, and again Montoya takes them fairly slowly initially and then gets on the power as he comes out of the final corner, and Montoya begins to pick up the pace. Remember how quick Montoya can be on cold tyres. This is his opportunity to show that to its fullest extent, and Tracy trying to stay with him. Franchitti in third as Herta trying to get past the lapped car there of Scott Pruitt. Scott Pruitt was in line, but he has gone down a lap already.
That's right, there are three cars that are not on the lead lap. That is Scott Pruitt, Gualter Salas and Naoki Hattori, and there is Jimmy Vasser also squeezing past Scott Pruitt as the leaders now down into turn 4. The first three already a good lead ahead of Brian Herta, and that is Jimmy Vasser ahead of Max Papis in the battle for 5th and 6th.
Yes, Papis, who again has gained so much ground here in this race due to good pit stops, and he gets it a little bit crossed up there, missed his apex big time, but he manages to gather it together and stays behind Jimmy Vasser. So Papis in 6th place. Castroneves still runs behind him in 7th place. Then it's Gilles de Ferran, Michael Andretti. Cristiano D'Amato still running in 10th place. Then 11th it's Maurizio Gugelmin. 12th position for Robby Gordon. 13th for Greg Moore. Then Richie Hearn, Mimo Gidley, Mark Blundell, Jan Magnussen, PJ Jones and Roberto Moreno, who had to restart at the back of the queue. Now then, back with our race leaders, and look at how Montoya, again, that cold tyre thing, look, he opened up a 1.6 second advantage on the restart lap. That is breathtaking stuff again from the Colombian, able to just pull away on the restarts, and Tracy did not have an answer for him there. The question is, once the tyres get fully up to temperature, can Tracy perhaps find a little bit more pace out of his car?
Yeah, that's the key question here. That's what he's going to have to do, of course, to get on terms with Montoya. And I have to say, it doesn't look very likely. Montoya has been on sensational form today. As we said earlier on, he struggled in practice on Friday in the dry. Yesterday, didn't get a chance to improve the car, at least not to get a quantifiable improvement, because it rained all day long and did not get to any dry weather running. But clearly, they made some changes. They went out in the warm-up this morning, and the changes are working well. Another quick change on that first pit stop that we saw. Ben said they added a little bit of front wing, and that has made the difference. Juan Montoya in a class of his own once again today, has to be said.
Yeah, it does have to be said. Much as we saw in Road America when he opened up that huge lead, only to suffer gearbox problems, which dropped him out of the running.
2.5, you're plus 2.5.
Again, hearing from Chip Ganassi on the lead. That was the advantage that Montoya enjoys over Paul Tracy. 2.5 means 2.5 seconds, the gap between himself and the Canadian in second position. And what an amazing season this has been for Montoya. Still a little way to go in this race, 16 laps to go, and anything can happen. But let's just think for a moment. He's already had 4 victories in 13 races. This is race number 14 of his Champ Car career. He could have had wins in several other places. Japan, he was running so well, they ran out of fuel. Road America, as we've already mentioned, the gearbox failed on him. In Michigan, he came within a few thousandths of a second of beating Tony Kanaan across the line. And then last weekend in Detroit, he was dominating things in Detroit until a miscue on the pit stops meant that he dropped down the order and then crashed with Roberta Moreno and finally went out hit by Helio Castroneves. That's racing, that's the way it goes. And if onlys, well, there's plenty of them around. Just goes to prove, however, that Montoya's been on the pace the whole time. There's Mark Blundell trying to get past Richie Hearn, and Richie Hearn just shutting the door on him as they went through that fast kick on the backstretch. Blundell doing a good job. Remember, he started at the very back of the grid. He lies in 16th place, and in fact his teammate Maurizio Gugelmin is only 2 places ahead of him, and he did not have to start at the back, although Maurizio didn't qualify too brilliantly himself either. There's Blundell, the digital DNA colour scheme again this weekend. The black, silver and red colours tucked in behind the Budweiser machine of Richie Hearn. Just behind them it's Mimo Gidley, the second of the Peyton Coyne cars. And there we see the onboard view from Richie Hearn. Richie lies in 14th place. Juan Montoya has the advantage here, and there are 15 laps to go. So there is the onboard view once again. Montoya changing up out of, I'm glad to say the audio is actually from a different car. I thought for a moment he'd slowed down. That was slightly confusing. He's still on the pace. Juan Montoya, 69 laps completed. 14 to go now. And just look at the advantage that he has pulled out. How many laps have we had since the restart, Jeremy?
We've had just 4 laps since the restart.
And it's 4 seconds advantage. That means a second a lap. He's in the same kind of car, with the same engine, the same tyres as Paul Tracy and Dario Franchitti behind him, and he's pulled away at 1 second a lap. That has to be impressive stuff. And Montoya is just showing his class here once again. Only 23 years old. It's his first year of true top-level international racing, although he comes in as Formula 3000 champion, and that's pretty international. But Juan Montoya having to get used to pit stops, long races this year rather, and he has just done superbly. There, however, in trouble and with a little fire at the back of his car is Mimo Gidley, and that was a great shame because he's been driving a solid, consistent race here today, and unfortunately, just like Michel Jourdain had problems a few laps ago, it looks as though Mimo Gidley is out in this race.
That's a shame. He is a very talented young man. He did a very good job for Walker Racing, sitting in for Naoki Hattori in 3 or 4 races, and now got another opportunity with Peyton Coyne. Just a 2-race deal at the moment, but he's certainly made a very good impression with that small, underfunded team, and shame he should go out of the race in these closing stages.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how many drivers are around this weekend. We spoke to Tom Christensen earlier. David Brabham was here this weekend. A lot of Indy Lights drivers. You know, it's contract time in Champ Car racing, so anything you can do is important. 70 laps in the books now. Juan Montoya with a 4.8 second advantage, nearly a second a lap. His last lap time was a 1 minute 7.9. Tracy runs second, Franchitti in third. I guess the big question now is Franchitti and Tracy, because remember, Franchitti lies as championship leader at the moment. There's 2 points difference for finishing in second place rather than third. Will we see team orders come into it at all? Tracy, of course, has his own championship to worry about, and he lies in 4th place in the series, so I'd rather doubt that at this point Team Green are going to say to Paul, you know, let Dario come past.
I have to agree with you there, Ben. They're both in the thick of the championship chase. They've got a chance of it at this stage in the season. 30 points behind was Paul Tracy coming into this weekend. He was somewhat more than 60 points behind only 5 or 6 races ago, so he will not want to give up any points at all, and certainly at the moment he seems to have the legs of Dario Franchitti. Neither of them is able to challenge the race leader Juan Montoya, but if the situation stays as it is right now, 20 points for Montoya, 16 for Tracy, 14 for Franchitti. However, Franchitti also will get that point for the pole, and also for leading most laps. He led the first 54 laps of the race. It's a 83 lap race, so he already has that point in the bag.
Yeah, and it all makes a difference. But I tell you what, Jeremy, I'm very impressed with Mark Blundell in this race. We saw a graphic there showing how he's moved up in this race. Talking to him earlier, he's not at full fitness. It's only his second race back from the accident that he suffered earlier in this season at Gateway in testing. That put him out of action for a lot of races, and of course it's the neck which takes such a pounding at this track, and he was saying really he's struggling with his neck here this weekend. You cannot simulate that in a gym, the sort of forces that are on the neck, and yet he's been racing hard all day long here today. He's still tucked in right behind Richie Hearn, and I have to say it's a brave and determined drive we're seeing from Mark Blundell.
Yes, it certainly is. He's not given up at all. He really is a bulldog. Here's Mark Blundell, and he just wants to get as high up in the order if he can. If he gets into the points, that will represent an extremely good afternoon's work by this very gutsy Englishman.
Man who started alongside him on the back row is a couple of places further ahead. Brian Herter. Brian Herter slows down in the Shell car. I don't know what the problem is, but Brian Herter's been running in 4th place just about all day. It's all gone wrong for him, and he's so desperately needed some points here today. There are rumours that Bobby Rahal's looking to replace Brian Herter in the team. Other opportunities may exist, but he does need the results at this stage in the year, and it's all gone wrong for him again today.
What a great shame for Brian Herter. There is Juan Montoya. That is 73 laps in the books now, just 10 laps to go for Juan Montoya, and he is looking good. Look at the lead he has over the 2nd and 3rd place cars, almost the full length of that straight from turns 1 to turn 2.
Well, I don't know, he's come along and he's destroyed this race, hasn't he? He's spoiled it really, although I have to say he did a brilliant job working his way up from that 8th position starting. Big help from his team, however, and as we've seen it before with Alex Zanardi in the past, that you need both parts of the combination. You need the team to do the job in the pit lane, you need the driver to do the job on track. Zanardi did it many times, picking off places one by one, both on track and in the pits, and it's happened again for Montoya. Brian Herta, well, we hear that it's some sort of, well, the engine's cut basically. It may be an electronic problem, some sort of engine problem perhaps. Whatever it is, it means that Herta's out of the race, and it means that Jimmy Vasser, the other Ganassi car, is now up into 4th position. Ganassi scored their first ever 1-2 here back in 1996, and once again they've shown really since 1996 they are the class team in the field, and Montoya's showing that he today is the class driver. 7/10 of a second faster than anyone on that last lap. This time around he's only half a second faster than Paul Tracy, only half a second.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, he doesn't need to go fast at this stage. He has the race in the bag. He really can put it on cruise control now and just drive it home to the finish. But as you say, he's still pushing pretty hard.
9 laps to go then. There is Gilles de Ferran. As you see, he's running in 6th position, and there behind is Helio Castroneves. That car's still holding together, and that's been a little unusual in some of the recent races. Mercedes power there for the Lola chassis. They've had all sorts of bizarre problems with both car and engine over the course of the season. Got a finish last week in Detroit. He brought it home in 7th place despite the wheel hanging off it after he'd hit Juan Pablo Montoya. So 7th place in Detroit last week, and Helio Castroneves perhaps heading for another 7th place finish here today. Meanwhile, behind him, there's Michael Andretti in 8th position.
Yeah, not the best of afternoons for Michael Andretti. He was certainly hoping for more here at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course. He does, like everybody else, he loves this racetrack. It really is a very demanding track indeed, and he was hoping for much better than 8th place. He was only 12 points behind Dario Franchitti in 2nd place coming into this race, and now will lose quite a bit of ground.
Encouraging day for Toyota, I have to say. They've got Cristiano D'Amato running 9th, Robby Gordon 10th. Now, while that might not sound too brilliant, with the number of very few retirements that we've seen here today, this is a genuine performance, genuine top 10 performance from the Toyota powered cars, and I think that's a good boost for them. Toyota's been working so hard on getting this engine up to the speed of the Hondas particularly, and the Ford and Mercedes. Toyota are beginning to make some ground, there's no doubt about that. They have done this whole season. But what do you say about Honda? Because once again, they're in the top 3 cars. And in fact, Dario Franchitti was talking about how strong that Honda engine was in qualifying on Friday.
Absolutely, it really is a strong motor. It's reliable. It has plenty of horsepower. It has excellent drivability as well. It has good low-down torque and good top-end performance. You can't really beat that. If you've got the best of all that combination, you're really looking good. As we watch Juan Montoya one more time, that is now 7 laps to go.
Now then, I've got a chance to hear from the Ganassi team, and Rob Hill, let's go down to the pits.
Montoya gets by. What have you done to give this car so much strength? Because I know he was frustrated after this morning's warm-up session.
Basically just play with it a little bit, small changes. We thought we still had a good car, we just needed to fine-tune a little bit.
Did you have to do anything that you consider a big calculated risk or gamble?
No.
This kid's amazing, isn't he?
He really is.
Not many words, but a lot of smiles.
Well, a lot of smiles, but of course it's always a tense time down there in pit lane when you've got 7 laps to go and you're enjoying an 8.5 second lead, because as we saw in Michigan, it can all go wrong right at the last moment.
That's right, particularly when you see your driver right on the limit here. 1 minute 6.788. That's one of the fastest laps of the whole race. I think it is actually the fastest lap of the race, with 7 laps to go when you've got a huge lead, and he's right on the limit. Meanwhile, not on the limit is Mauricio Gugelmin.
Gugelmin coasts to a halt. Another problem there. Now, I don't know what that one is. Looks a bit similar to Brian Herta, doesn't it? Looks as though a loss of power all of a sudden as he coasts to a stop. It's engine related, we gather, and well, whatever it is, Gugelmin coasts to a halt. It takes him out of 12th position, and that means Richie Hearn moves up into a point scoring position here today. That would be a little bit of a boost for him. Another Toyota powered car, that would mean, in the top 12. So Toyota definitely enjoying their day here at Mid-Ohio. Wonderful overhead shot again, looking down at the gap between Montoya and Tracy. 9.3 seconds, and Franchitti doesn't seem to be able to do anything about holding on to Tracy either. Franchitti's dropped back a little bit in third place, and if he doesn't watch out, Vassar is going to be close behind him fairly soon, although the lap times between the two very, very similar. Last time, not quite such a rapid lap from Montoya. He was in the 6s, as you mentioned earlier, Jeremy. Back in the 1:07s. Perhaps the team are saying, "Look, calm down, boy. You don't need to go quite that fast."
I certainly hope so. Across the line that time, 1:07.5 that time. That's a bit more sensible, I'm sure. Chip Ganassi will be more than comfortable with that. That's a good, easy pace for Juan Montoya. It's still enough for him to extend his lead once again over Paul Tracy. He's 3/4 of a second lap faster, even when he's on cruise mode.
And you could hear Chip telling him the gap again. You're plus 10, he said, plus 10. The 10 seconds his advantage now over Paul Tracy. Now, he may well have been pushing hard to establish a certain margin. Often drivers will feel comfortable when they get to, say, 8 or 10 seconds ahead of their nearest rival, and then they will begin to coast a little bit, perhaps, just back it off a bit, look after the machinery. A track like this is one of those tracks that if you lose concentration, if you back off too much, terribly easy to make a big mistake and throw it all away, and I'm sure Montoya will be all too conscious of that.
Yeah, he's got a goodly amount of experience as Juan Montoya. I really can't see him doing anything silly like that. Certainly back markers I don't think are going to come into play in this race. He has a good clear track in front of him and no traffic in sight whatsoever. So he is just literally, he's cruising along. There he goes across the line one more time into turn 1. 1:07.37 that's time around. Again, good consistent speed. Not using all the track there on the 8th into turn 1, and it just looks all so easy.
It does, doesn't it? What can you say about this young man? Almost beginning to run out of superlatives already. We're still only 2/3 of the way through the season. This would be win number 5 if he holds it all together for the remaining 4 laps of this race. And we haven't seen anyone dominate the series quite like Montoya. Even Zanardi didn't dominate it to quite this extent. Now, Zanardi worked with the team at that stage. The team still was building itself into a top title-winning team. Montoya stepped into a team that is right at the peak, but nonetheless, take nothing away from Montoya. He is driving absolutely superbly.
And another good performance, that is Robby Gordon on the right of the screen, and that there is Greg Moore, who, let's not forget, he started on the back row of the grid with Mark Blundell, and Greg Moore is now up into 11th place, so 26th to 11th, an extremely fine afternoon's work by Greg Moore.
Seems a shame, doesn't it, that he's only going to pick up a couple of points there if he finishes in 11th place, in spite of being hard at work all afternoon. Temperatures have climbed. We're in the mid-70 degrees Fahrenheit now, and it will be pretty warm in that cockpit working around this Mid-Ohio circuit. Running in 9th position, and that would be a good solid finish for the Brazilian rookie. He runs second in the Rookie of the Year competition, but of course there's not going to be much doubt about who's winning that this year. A certain Juan Montoya is a rookie leader by a huge margin, of course, and he will go back into the lead of the championship, I think. Well, it's going to be fairly almost even, isn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, he will pick up 4 points this weekend. He will get 20 points for the win, 16 for Tracy in second place, and 14 plus 1 plus 1. That is 1 for the pole and 1 for most laps led for Dario Franchitti. So Montoya will reduce the margin by 4 points. What was it at the beginning of the weekend?
5 points.
Absolutely right.
So it'll be a 1-point gap between Montoya and Franchitti, with Franchitti still maintaining that slender advantage as the teams head off for another weekend in a row. They go off to Chicago next week, and it'll be another racetrack. And in fact, interestingly enough, of course, next week on the new oval, it's a track that's owned by none other than Chip Ganassi, a brand new racetrack, brand new 1-mile oval. Chip Ganassi has funded it, put it all together. We're looking forward to seeing what this new facility is like. And of course, he'll be expecting great things from his 2 drivers, Montoya and Vassar, when they get to what is his now own track. But of course, it doesn't always work like that. Look at Penske and their record on their own tracks. Doesn't always quite go according to plan.
No, it doesn't. Best laid plans and all that, but there is Juan Montoya, and just a couple of places farther back is Jimmy Vassar. Matter of fact, Jimmy Vassar is making a move on the 2 Team Cool Green cars. He's reduced the gap that was, well, it was actually more than 5 seconds once Brian Herter pulled out of the race 9 laps ago, the gap from Paul Tracy and or Dario Franchitti, I should say, in third place to Jimmy Vasser was 5.4 seconds. Now it's just over 1 second as Juan Montoya takes the white flag. Just 1 lap to go.
Just the 1 lap then, and Juan Montoya will be coming through to take his 5th win of the season here in Champ Cars. And what a superb drive it has been today. He did not have it easy. It wasn't as if he started up front. He started from the 4th row of the grid. He got involved in a battle with Gilles de Ferran early in the race. Could not make any progress, but he didn't do anything silly, didn't throw it away. He waited until the first round of pit stops. The team then managed to get him up into 3rd, combined with some rapid laps on cold tyres that he put in. He got up to 3rd place, hunted down Paul Tracy, overtook Paul Tracy to take the lead when Franchitti came into the pit, and when they all settled down again after the pit stops, Montoya was able to pull away at a 2nd a lap. 11.7 seconds his advantage the last time around, and Juan Montoya is heading for victory here at Mid-Ohio. This Colombian superstar is going to do it again here today in the sunshine of Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course in front of an enthusiastic crowd of spectators.
Beautiful.
Juan Montoya.
You're the man. Great job today driving. You did a great job driving today.
He wins here at Mid-Ohio.
For everything. Great pit stop as well.
And that's good to hear. Chip Ganassi congratulating his driver, and Montoya saying thanks for everything, great pit stops as well. And that's right, he wouldn't have won it without his team today. They did a fantastic job in the pits. There's Jimmy Vasser, and Jeremy didn't quite manage to get past those 2 Team Green cars at the end.
No, in actual fact, he slowed right down on the last lap. I'm not quite sure why. He was right on the tail of Dario Franchitti. I don't know whether he made a mistake somewhere. I certainly couldn't see that, but he was a little bit farther back as they crossed the line. But no less a good run, I think, for Jimmy Vasser.
So Montoya the winner. Tracy finishes 2nd here today. Franchitti in 3rd. Jimmy Vasser is in 4th position. Max Papis a fine 5th place on the home track for Team Rahal. Gilles de Ferran 6th. Helio Castroneves does get another finish in 7th. Michael Andretti struggling today, finished in 8th. Cristiano D'Amata in 9th place. Robby Gordon 10th. Greg Moore did survive to finish 11th. Richie Hearn took that final point in 12th. And Blundell had to be disappointed in the end. Drove a great race from the back of the field, but 13th position in the end. Jan Magnussen 14th, PJ Jones 15th. Moreno survived, but down in 16th place. And then we're down to cars a lap down or more. Scott Pruitt, Walter Sales, Naoki Hattori, Maurizio Guzman, then the first of the non-finishers. There, the Ganassi team celebrating Vasser and Montoya. Well, Vasser finished 2nd to Zanardi here in 1996, and this time he finishes in 4th place, again to his Ganassi teammate winning. This time it's Juan Montoya.
And another fantastic, flawless performance by Juan Montoya. Great pit strategy. He was able to save enough fuel on that first stint and enabled him to do 2 more laps before he came into the pits. And that is absolutely crucial on these road courses. And that's because you take advantage of that low fuel tank, less weight, and a hot tyre, so you can really turn in a couple of fast laps before you make your pit stop. And that enables him to come out just ahead of the other 2 cars. And that is what won in the race. Great work all around by the Target Chip Ganassi Racing crew.
And the team dive in straight away, don't they? Look at the congratulations for Juan Montoya. And it's great to see the enthusiasm doesn't dim. It's number 5 in the books, and yet the delight is there. And I think that's largely because they didn't expect it today, starting 8th. I don't think any of them expected that he was just going to dominate today's afternoon. Mo Nunn there in the background, and just a quick shake of the hands. Job done, simple as that.
Yeah, and his father there, Pablo Montoya, as well, who got him started in go-karts 10, 12 years ago, and there is the results of the race. Juan Montoya the winner, Ben.
Yes, and as you mentioned, the extra points for Dario Franchitti for pole and laps led. Jimmy Vasser, Papis, then Gilles de Ferran in 6th place. Behind them, Castroneves, Michael Andretti, D'Amata, Robby Gordon, then Greg Moore and Richie Hearn. And indeed, we got several Toyota-powered cars there in the top 12. Further on down the list, you can see the finishers, and then the first of the non-finishers was Maurizio Guzman in 20th place. The other cars also failing to finish. Let's go down to
the rest of
the pit lane.
It's a beautiful trophy from the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course being presented now on behalf of Miller Lite for winning the 200. Now, I want to ask you, because I know you were very frustrated early today about the car and its balance. What happened to make this car so good in this race?
But I think we made some changes and the car improved through all the weekend. You know, this morning I wasn't very happy with the car still. I think Morris did a great job. He changed the car, and just more rubber in the track, the car just got better and better and better.
Did you think when you started this race that it was good enough that you might be able to challenge and get a win?
Not really, you know, unless when I had so much traffic at the beginning, I couldn't do anything. So I just leaned the car right down and just wait for the pit stops.
Yes, sir.
The first pit stop, I believe you went from 8th to 3rd. I don't think you can get any better service than that, can you?
I know, it was great. I think the guys did a great job, you know. We still managed to do an extra lap than anybody else, so that helped a lot.
The championship titans. Let's go to the other man in this chase right now with Jan.
And of course, that would be Dario Franchitti, who got out of the car extremely exhausted, having a word with. You feeling okay now? I know you gave it your best effort, and this is a hot racetrack.
Yeah, I don't feel physically that tired. I'm just pretty upset about the about something none of us can do anything about. We had a slow puncture in the second after the first pit stop, and it was just killing us. The car was all over the place. The car was great the first session, and then this slow puncture just cost us track position. You know, the back markers were a joke today. You know, some of them, I think we need to put some big mirrors on these things. It's a joke. So I was upset. You know, I think the puncture cost us the race, but the back markers certainly didn't help.
But from a championship standpoint, you are right there. It's not as if you fell out. So does that give you any consolation?
Yeah, not really. I mean, you know, I think we should have been up the front today. At the end there, you know, I was keeping a consistent gap to Paul. I didn't have enough to get past him, but I wasn't about to start bleating on the radio that he was holding me up, because he really wasn't that much. If I'd have got by him, I'd have probably run a couple of tenths a lot quicker, but nothing else. So there wasn't any point in upsetting the order of things. I'm just a bit fed up with the result, to be honest. I think we had the thing under control until the problems.
And of course, the emotions are high anytime there's a championship on the line.
A very low-key Dario Franchitti there in the interview. Finished 3rd today, but he still maintains the championship lead by 1 point. So he shouldn't be too miserable. It could be a lot worse. Juan Montoya 2nd, Michael Andretti in 3rd place, and Paul Tracy now just 2 points behind Andretti. So an interesting championship battle that continues, and well, it was a very low-key Dario Franchitti we saw. I can understand that, Jeremy, because obviously he had a problem as well, which we didn't know about, but he has to look back at this and say, well, we're still up front, we're still leading the series.
Yeah, that's what he will do tomorrow morning, but right now he's disappointed. He was on the pole, he did a fantastic job to get that pole. It was a sensational lap in qualifying. He led 54 laps of the race and still ends up in 3rd place. He's just wondering how on earth that can happen.
That's right, just doesn't seem to quite come together for him. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our coverage here on Eurosport of this 14th round of the series, and don't forget that coming up next weekend we'll bring you full live coverage of the Chicago race on the brand new oval track, and we hope that you'll be able to join us for that to see whether Montoya is able to get back in front of Franchitti, or whether Franchitti can maintain that championship lead. From Ben Edwards and Jeremy Shaw and Eurosport's coverage of Champ Car racing, until next week, bye-bye for now.
The Kart Championship Series with Kia in Gear.